Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn, and today's episode we're talking about future NFL wide receiver signings with CeeDee Lamb. There's been a lot of major contracts that have come out recently. Amon-Ra St. Brown, of course, Justin Jefferson, then of course you got Jalen Waddle. So a lot of wide receivers are getting paid, and it's like a merry-go-round where you start to, or I would say probably musical chairs, you start to run out of seats. And what we're going to do in this video is we are going to give a proper evaluation of CeeDee Lamb. So we're going to look at his pre-draft profile, his post-draft profile, to see how he should be valued. What value does he bring to the team from a data perspective? So there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff in this video. So stay tuned until the end of the video where I give my final outlook on CeeDee Lamb and ultimately the contract that he should get when it's all said and done with the process for him. But taking a look at the setup here. So CeeDee Lamb was drafted at pick 17 in the 2020 NFL draft class by the Dallas Cowboys. Since that time, he has earned first team All Pro honors in 2023, three Pro Bowls from 2021 to 2023, and he has accumulated 5,145 receiving yards and 318 rushing yards and 36 touchdowns. That's fantastic production for him. So he's been a very productive, if not the main target for the Dallas Cowboys over the last couple of years in a league that is increasingly about the passing game. So with that information at our way, let's get to his pre-draft profile. So in order to know about what the projection is for an NFL wide receiver, a lot of times you have to look at their pre-draft profile because it can inform you on, is this guy a one-hit wonder? Is this player somebody who has been good, but he may not be able to break into that upper echelon of production because of his pre-draft profile. So I'm going to make some future videos in terms of that particular area, but in terms of CeeDee Lamb, in terms of his offensive market share, he was fairly solid across the board. Pretty much within the starter averages in terms of the 70 percentile area for his receiving market share, total offensive market share, and then 80 percentile in terms of touchdown market share. All those numbers are pretty much exactly what you want for a player like him. And when you get to efficiency scores, incredible efficiency. He was in the 90 plus percentile in terms of touchdowns per touch and yards per reception. All those things are very important. So even though he may not have been elite in terms of his overall market share production in Oklahoma, he did have elite efficiency, which kind of gives you the idea, okay, maybe if he was in a different offense that wasn't as spready, he probably would have been more productive. That's essentially what efficiency sometimes can tell you. On top of that, in terms of athleticism traits, he wasn't the most athletic player. He had a 46 percentile explosion score, 51 percentile in terms of speed, and didn't do any flexibility testing, the short shuttle and the three cone, those kinds of things. Now, wide receivers like this, again, athleticism is not the biggest deal in the world. You just want to have one above average trait. But even when he came out in the draft that year, I did identify this as a potential scary point, if you will, sort of a red flag, if you will. Obviously, he's had a great NFL career, which we're going to get to later in the video, but this was definitely one of those areas where athleticism-wise, it just wasn't showing up for him on paper. So it's kind of like, okay, he is athletic enough, but a lot of times when you're talking about taking a player in the first round, you want them to have elite level athleticism or at least be in the 60 to 70 percentile. He wasn't that. But that, again, doesn't have a huge bearing on his success. A lot of things with wide receivers is really more about production and, of course, all the intangibles of the position. When you get to adjusted production for him, adjusted production was great. Age score, phenomenal. MSA rating, phenomenal. Pass rating, phenomenal. So his overall production was a little suspect, but when you adjust it for his age, for his level of competition, for the team that he was on, he was easily within the All-Pro averages and the Pro Bowl averages at the position based on that. So the overall pre-draft profile for CeeDee Lamb, when you give him an overall data score, he had a 95.20 out of 100 score. That data score combined with his draft status put him in prime position to become an all-star wide receiver in the NFL. And based on his post-draft profile, he has emerged as one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Taking a look at his advanced stats data, his target market share has been through the roof, 99 percentile in 2023. So he has, in terms of getting targets on the Dallas Cowboys from 2018 to 2023, he's done better than 99.69% of the league in terms of overall targets in that time span. Fantastic. His reception numbers, of course, are also great. Usually, when you have target numbers like that, you're going to have really high receptions. Yardage also is fantastic. Yards per route is decent, not the best, but definitely decent. His TD percentage has also been really good from 2022 to 2023. And his first down percentage has also been fantastic from 2021 to 2023. So, for the most part, from 2021 to 2023, he's really emerged as a really great high-end wide receiver during that time span. And when you look at his other data, so this is his micro data or per snap data. His yards before contact per reception has not been the best, but his yak percentage has. So for the vast majority of his career, he has had above average yak ability. A-dot has been sort of below average, but again, that's not the biggest deal in the world. More on that later on in this video, but A-dot or average depth of target really doesn't matter that much in terms of correlating to wins in the NFL. And in terms of breaking tackles, fantastic as well. 2021, 90 percentile. 2022, 2023, he was 80 percentile in terms of his ability to break tackles. So per reception. So that's definitely a good thing for him there. When you get to his drop percentage, he was early on, had some issues with drops, but since then he's been pretty much average at the position in terms of drop percentage. And this is with a really high volume. So there are going to be players who have better drop scores just because of the fact that they didn't get thrown the football as much. And because of that, that's something that could skew the data off. But he definitely has been very good in terms of his drop percentage, not really dropping a lot of footballs over the last 2 years, especially for high volume. In terms of the quarterback rating, his best year so far, again, there's progression here. He had a 92 percentile quarterback rating in terms of when he was targeted by the quarterback. He typically gave them a 92.76 quarterback rating, which is really important in terms of winning football games, let me tell you. So that's definitely a good number for him. And then TD percentage and first down percentage, also decent numbers for him based on those numbers right there. Now, when you get to his macro production, his been very solid, 90 percentile across the board. Interception percentage was kind of high early on, but has improved, as you can see. His efficiency has improved year over year as well, and his rec star rating, which is his overall production plus efficiency, overall has also done really well. So there's progression here. There's solid progression. Every year he's gotten better from where he started as a rookie, which is definitely something you want to see. And then, of course, he peaked in many ways at age 24 in 2023. So again, great, phenomenal numbers for him in many ways in terms of production. In terms of correlation, so this is the part of video where you kind of have to put your thinking caps on. But in terms of wide receiver correlations at the position, in terms of advanced statistics, the biggest numbers that really matter in terms of projecting wide receivers is touchdowns. Overall touchdowns is a big thing in terms of wins. Also, first downs, yards before contact, yak overall, yardage, regular yardage, receiving yardage also, and then everything else is a little bit lower. Things that don't matter is targets. Targets do not really correlate that much to winning football games. Yards before contact per reception, also not so much, and that's just because that's looking at things from a micro perspective, not from a macro perspective. So you could have a guy who has a really high yards before contact per reception score, and he only had 10 passes thrown to him. So that's one reason why that number can be skewed. A-dot is that number right in between yak and breaking tackles. And again, there's no correlation at all to wins for average depth of target. Even though it's something that everybody wants to talk about, the data suggests it doesn't matter. It's not correlative. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose in terms of A-dot. Now, of course, maybe the type of offense that you're in, that would matter. But for the most part, in general, A-dot doesn't really matter to wins. So that's something definitely you can ignore. And drop percentage as well is something that really doesn't matter. So even though I did talk about and gave him praise for his drop percentage doesn't really matter that much to success at the NFL level. Now, when you get to other statistics, so this is basic Pro Football Reference stats for CeeDee Lamb. His success percentage, which is something if you go to Pro Football Reference, it'll kind of give you a general definition for this. But success percentage is essentially uh, every reception he has, how much overall yardage is he getting to get a first down. So if he gets like 40% of the yardage needed to get a first down, it gives you sort of points based on that in terms of 40%, 60%, 80% on different downs and distances. Also takes into account conversion rates. So in many ways, it's looking at those numbers right there. And again, year over year, CeeDee Lamb has just gotten better and better and better every year. Catch percentage better and better. Yards for target also better and better every year for the most part. When you get to his other macro data and micro data for the basic Pro Football Reference statistics, again, better every year. It's just increasing and increasing in terms of everything. And of course, his TD first down combined numbers have been a little bit off, but for the most part, his overall production has been fantastic, and micro production has been good as well. Micro production is essentially taking a look at the per snap production, if you will, versus just the macro data. When you get to wide receiver correlations for basic stats, it's a little bit more spread all around. And the reason for that is because it's more data, and also there's a lot more, information in there in terms of like sample size and everything else like that. It's not as concentrated, I would say, is the best way to put it. When you look at this wide receiver production correlations at the position, the biggest things that really matter for correlation purposes is micro production. It's very important. Regular reception data, which takes a look at micro production, and macro production is also really important. TD percentage is decent. For target, yards per target, definitely important. Catch percentage is important, as well as the success percentage metric that I was telling you guys about. So these are the biggest numbers that really matter in terms of correlating to NFL wins based on data. So definitely something you guys should, pay attention to. When you get to the win correlation score, so I took all that information that I just showed you in terms of statistics, in terms of the advanced stats and the overall statistics, and gave a generalized score for correlation for CeeDee Lamb, kind of looking at him and going, okay, uh, let's score this wide receiver based on the numbers that matter, and then compare him to all the other wide receivers in the NFL. And based on that information, CeeDee Lamb has pretty much been the ninth best wide receiver from 2021, 2022, and 2023. So each season, he's been the ninth best. Now, he definitely has improved his win correlation rates from 2021 to 2023, but he's pretty much been right there in terms of being ninth. And then 2020 was, of course, his rookie season, where he was a little bit inconsistent in terms of 42nd, but for the most part, he's been the ninth best wide receiver in terms of contributions to wins in the NFL since 2021 to 2023. Taking a look at his current contract, he is making $17,991 this year, which is in terms of overall salary, and his league cap is 7%, which is the 29th ranked cap hit in the NFL. So he is being grossly underpaid. So his production has been fantastic, and he's been underpaid what he really is worth for the production that he's been putting up. So that is something that definitely needs to change. How much does it need to change? Well, in terms of the data work that I've been able to do, I looked at CeeDee Lamb and I looked at it from this perspective in terms of the contract. He's been consistently the ninth best wide receiver from a contribution to wins perspective since 2021. However, he has shown massive progression in his ability over time. Based on that information, I believe a contract that pays him, say, 11% league cap, which is ninth overall. So when I took a look at all the current wide receivers this year in terms of their contracts and their league cap percentage, because that's the thing I care about. I don't really care about the number, salary, and all that stuff. The cap number is the big thing. The percentage of the cap is really what I care about because the cap numbers are always going to go up. The salaries are always going to go up. I just want to know what that percentage is. And in terms of him, I think 11% is probably where it needs to start at, based on because that's just a generalized that's how well he's been producing. That's essentially who he is in many ways. And then progressively up his league cap into the top 10 with fair compensation. So I think, NFL contracts, I think a lot of times are always based on what a player is right now as much as what they will become in the future. And I think Lamb, this type of contract that I'm showing you right now, is a contract that one makes him the highest, or at least the highest contract for a wide receiver in terms of breaking historical records. But at the same time, I think it's very reasonable in terms of his contributions and what he could potentially become. He's 24 years old, going to be 25 years old this year, and he's been consistently ninth overall. But he has shown that progression in terms of his advanced statistics, and because of that, I think you definitely need to make a progression sort of like this. So I think 11% in 2025 in terms of this, 12% in 2026, 13% in 2027, and then 14% in 2028. That 14% mark would basically make him the second to third best wide receiver in terms of league cap percentage in that time frame. And again, this is with me knowing ahead of time that he's really only been the ninth best wide receiver consistently over 3 years. But I just the advanced stats is really pulling me in. It's really drawing me in terms of his advanced stats. So I think based on that information, I think this is kind of the contract you should be looking at for him. Now, again, average per year salary would be about $38 million dollars over the course of the contract. I would say 80% guaranteed. So I think $144 million guaranteed should be kind of the number that you're looking at. It's pretty comparable to what Justin Jefferson got. And then a signing bonus of $27 million would be another added aspect of the contract as well for this. Now, you could take off some years from it if you want to save yourself some money, but I think this really would, in many ways, it would be paying CeeDee Lamb less than Justin Jefferson to a certain extent in terms of his numbers because Justin Jefferson, going into the future, his next contract after that one, I think probably could be better than this one in some ways. So based on that, I think this locks him in, and I think it will because you are putting that progression in there. You're basically telling him like, hey, this is what you've been thus far. You could get here. We've seen your progress. We've seen that your ability to get here, and that would be kind of the motivation to kind of keep playing to kind of get the um, residuals with it. Now, definitely with a contract extension like this, you probably won't be able to really cut him until say 2027. I don't even know what the quarterback situation is going to be for the Dallas Cowboys because Dak Prescott, a lot of people have rumored that Dak Prescott is out for the Cowboys, or at the very least, the sentiments are that they're growing restless with him. He's sort of like a toy that people are kind of getting tired of playing with. Again, I hope that's not the case because he has been a really solid quarterback, but it is Cowboy fans we're talking about here. Now, when you look at the outlook for him, this is my general outlook. I think CeeDee Lamb has consistently been one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, but he's also the most likely wide receiver to be overpaid. So CeeDee Lamb is based on data, not that equivalent to Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, and Jamar Chase. So when you look at all the correlative data in terms of wins for Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb doesn't quite meet those guys in terms of expectation, in terms of their data. And again, I'm not talking about what some media pundit says or what some ESPN dude says or what some PFF guy says. I'm basing it on actual verifiable statistical data with win correlations, for the NFL. This is about as transparent as you could possibly get. So again, this is something that can be replicated with anybody. I can tell you exactly the method for doing it, and you can do it yourself and get the same results. So that's what I mean by transparent. That's what I mean by, is different from everybody else because there's that transparency there. Now, I think Lamb puts up a lot of flashy numbers, but again, his overall data is more indicative of a top 10 wide receiver versus a top 5 wide receiver in terms of the numbers that matter to win. So again, I'm not talking about the flashy receptions and the targets and all that other kind of stuff, but because those things don't really matter as much as other things. I think he does have a very high volume, and maybe if he had less volume, he would be more efficient. I think that definitely is something to kind of consider because he's been just a lot. He's been eating like crazy in that Cowboys offense. So maybe if he got a tag team or a tag mate, and maybe maybe that would make him more efficient if he wasn't eating as much as he's eating right now in the Cowboys. But either way, though, he does have the potential to punch into the top five one day, and his contract would be well deserved with the progression he has shown every season. So that is my outlook for CeeDee Lamb based on data. Let me know in the comment section below. What type of contract do you think CeeDee Lamb needs? You think 4 years is a little excessive in terms of an extension? Do you think it should be closer to 3 years? Those types of things. I think this would kind of, again, this would lock him into his prime years, and then you kind of get out right when he might start to decline. So again, I think that's what it does, and it also kind of will save you some money because you're not necessarily paying him as the top. You're not paying him anticipating him to be the best wide receiver over the course of that span. You're paying him to essentially be sort of a top 10, top 5, probably top 5 would be the best explanation for it overall. But with all this stuff out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Jim Coburn. Check out my other work at patreon.com/jcoburn. Also check out my X, formerly known as Twitter account, at Geometrics, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.